I lived with my wife at her family's farm. That was until I discovered a dark family secret. Hello, I need you to listen to what I'll have to say. I met my wife 5 years ago, and we dated for a few years. As I didn't have much of a family, her folks took me in. We married 3 years after. They had a large farm and acres of land in North Iowa. Her family even let us live in a small property, close to the main farmhouse. There was, however, part of the farm that was heavily restricted. Whenever I brought this up to my wife, she just said it was only where they ran their meat distribution business. The only family members allowed up there were her father and 3 uncles. This was apparently down to safety reasons, but I still didn't see why that would result in it being out of bounds. I would see a lot of vehicles going too, and from this part of the farm throughout the week. Even some vehicles that didn't come back down the track. The area was at least a mile away from the main farmyard. Around 3 weeks ago, I decided I would drive up there and make an excuse to get access. This was the turning point where everything I had been told before just didn't add up. As I neared the gate, a large row-looking board-red man stepped out of a shed next to the opening, with a 12-gauge shotgun in hand. I had never seen him before, but he knew me. He said, "I shouldn't be here and that I need to go back to the farm." I stated that I needed to speak to my father-in-law urgently about a cultivator issue. He then abruptly said I will let him know and I was to leave now. I got back into the car and I looked past the barrier as I turned around. There must have been 20 to 30 people doing different jobs, running around busy working. I noticed there was also a track that led away from the farm on the other side. It also never been mentioned or I had never seen it before. Later that night, my wife said that her father was angry that I had come up with that part of the farm, and I should never go back up there uninvited again. I questioned what the big deal was. I worked around dangerous and heavy machinery every day. She just looked at me and said, "Just drop it." At that point, I knew she knew exactly the reason why I shouldn't go up there. Me being me though, I just couldn't drop it. It was all I could think about day and night. My first thought was they're an organized crime family, but surely I would have noticed this. Unfortunately, the truth was worse than I could have ever imagined. 3 days ago, I made a decision to find out what was happening. I woke up at 2:30 a.m. and I quietly left the house. I got into my car, which I had purposely parked away from the farm to avoid waking anyone. I drove around the farmland, which was around a 7-mile detour, and came to what I had worked out to be a track at the opposite side of the farm. I pulled up nearby and started walking down the side of the road. I got about halfway down to pitch dark track rail, flashlight in hand, when headlights flooded the road in front of me. I scampered into the overgrown bushes that lined the route, turning my small flashlights off as I slid. As the truck flashed past me, I noticed that this was a government vehicle, accompanied by an armored escort. At this point, I was getting quite anxious about what I had gotten myself into. Once they had gone, I carried on, down the road. I came up to a small shed with a barrier and there was someone sitting inside. I managed to find a small gap under the surrounding fence, maybe 50 meters up, so I didn't have to get into the same confrontation as before. The yard was lit by multiple floodlights, and I could hear muffled talking from all around me. Seemingly coming from the buildings, there was 2 big barns and 3 smaller cabins. I saw that there was even a smaller cabin at the end with no lights on, and decided I would go to see if there was a way in. By one of the cabins, 3 armed men sat around a fire, and they seemed to be quite drunk, which gave me the chance to get to the vacant cabin. There was a window open on the far side, just enough for me to pry open and clamber through. On appearance, this seemed to be an office in a storage room. Files and books of shelves lined the walls with a computer in the center. I ran my flashlights across the files, and they were all organized into batches, grouped by dates. I grabbed one and flickered through it. There were hundreds of names listed that were only separated by dozens of the word unknown. Page after page. I stopped on one page and read across. Name, unknown. Gender, male. Age, 40 to 60. The next category turned my stomach, parts extracted. It then began to list the organs. Liver, heart, kidneys, eyes, then just stated, rest of meat to mentor. The list of names was endless. Every file had a signed federal approval page at the beginning. I slumped to the floor, in disbelief, asking myself if I was somehow part of this twisted farm, which specialized in human livestock. I had to see what was in the barns. I couldn't just take these books as proof. I shakily made my way back through the window and closed it. To how it was, back arched and head down, to one of the big barns, evading the flood-lit grounds around me. Got to the first barn, and I tried to look through the gap in between the panels. Nothing but darkness met my eyes. I hastily shoved my flashlight through. I saw blood-stained machinery, metal tables with medical instruments lined the far wall. There was a large door at the end, marked Chiller. I made my way around and I saw that the door led to a large metal extension with generator humming beside it. I then made my way to the other barn. I was suddenly hit by the stench of what I can only describe as death. I peered through the wooden panels. There was 5 large metal pens that were spaced out through the barn. Each one of them housed between 10 to 15 people, all of who were in and out of the state of consciousness. I suddenly lost my footing, and I slipped as I tried to get a better view. My right knee slammed heavily against the wooden panel, and I saw the man by the fire immediately jump up and head towards my direction. I ran, making a dart towards the fence opening, hoping the darkness would cloak my movement. I jumped as 3 shots came from behind me and I did a quick body check. Luckily, I was fine. Fortunately, they didn't pursue the source of a sound with any conviction. As I slipped through the fence and into the bushes, I couldn't believe that nobody had seen me. I suddenly looked back in horror, and I saw something I had missed before. There were security cameras high up on all 4 corners. I was screwed. They would know that I knew. I got back to the house and I couldn't bring myself to go back inside. I just had to get out of there. I grabbed 3 jerry cans of gas from my storage shed and I filled the tank up with force. I left that night. This leads me here, 1,000 miles away. People need to know the truth. These places exist, and one was being run right under my nose. I have ditched my phone and anything else linking me to my past life. But I know that won't be enough if the government is involved. Have borrowed my old buddy's computer to share these details with you. I can only hope that the software I use will protect him from being dragged into this. I don't know what my next move is, but if I can get a computer or a phone, I will update you on the situation. I will expose this industry one way or another. With that being said, look out for each other. You don't want to make it on the list.